I realized I had left it in the car on the motorway. Not actually in the car. In the bathroom dish, in Judith's house. In the room where I had placed it while washing the dishes after dinner, and where I had meant to pick it up in the morning, and where I had not picked it up because we had left earlier than planned, and the morning had been the specific rushed quality of a leaving that has a time attached to it. I was on the motorway when I understood that my hand felt wrong. The feeling is very specific, and I want to give it to you because it is the beginning of the account. The ring had been on my right hand for 12 years, and my right hand knew its own weight, and the absence of the weight was the thing that told me, somewhere between junction 4 and junction 5, that I had left it behind. I texted Judith from the passenger seat. I said, I left my grandmother's ring in the bathroom dish by the taps. Can you keep it safe and I'll collect it next visit? She texted back within 4 minutes. She said, yes, of course, darling. I put the phone down. I said to Daniel, she has it.
This is nice,
It is
isn't it?
safe.
It's perfect.
Good.
I love these
I
drives
put my
with
hand
you.
on my knee.
Me too. Just
The
you and
hand
me.
felt wrong for the rest of
You
the
know,
journey.
this drive is way more fun
And for
with you
several
here.
weeks after, in the specific way that you feel the absence of something you have worn long enough that the wearing has become part of the shape of the hand. But it was safe. She had it. She had texted back within 4 minutes. The ring was in the bathroom dish at Judith's house, 4 hours away, waiting for us. That was October the 4th. We went back in January. I asked for the ring. Judith said, oh. She said, I thought it was mine. She said, I gave it to Emily for her engagement. My name is Sophie. I am 34 years old. I have been married to Daniel for 6 years. The ring is not my engagement ring. The ring is a dark blue stone in a yellow gold setting that my grandfather gave to my grandmother on their first anniversary in 1958. My grandmother wore it every day of her married life. She left it to me in her will, specifically, to Sophie, when she is ready. I received it at 22 when I was ready. I have worn it every day for 12 years. It has been on my right hand, and it has been part of the shape of my hand for 12 years, and my grandmother's hand before that for 47 years, and it has a quality that is not replaceable, because the quality is time and presence, and the specific weight of a person who is gone and whose ring is still here. Judith gave it to her niece for an engagement gift in October. 3 months after, I texted her from Junction 4. Yes, of course, darling. I want to tell you about the ring before I tell you what happened after January, because the ring is the center of the account, and I want you to understand what it is, before we get to the part where it was given away. My grandmother was a woman named Frances. She died when I was 19. She was 81. She had been married to my grandfather for 53 years when he died, and she had lived alone for the last 7 years of her life in a house that was too big for one person, and that she had refused to leave on the grounds that the garden required her. The garden was large. She was correct about the requiring. She had maintained it alone for 7 years, with specific and unhurried attention, and when she died it was in the same condition of precision that it had been in when my grandfather was alive, which is what she had intended. The ring had been on her hand for all of it. 53 years of marriage and 7 years of the garden after. 60 years. 60 years of one hand. I was 22 when my mother placed it on my right hand, at my grandmother's kitchen table the week after the reading of the will. My mother had said, this is what she wanted. She said when Sophie is ready. She had said, I think you are ready. I had been 22 and I had looked at my hand, and the hand had immediately felt correct in a way that I had not expected, but that I recognized the moment it happened. The recognition of a thing that has found the right place. I had worn it every day since. 6 years when I met Daniel. He had known the ring from the first week. I had told him what it was on our 3rd date, at a restaurant, over the bread course, because the ring is not something I wear without its story. And the story was worth telling, and he had listened to it in the way he listens to things that are important. Completely. Without looking at anything else. He had looked at my hand when I finished. He had said, "I understand what it is." He had said, "I understand." That was the thing I needed him to understand. He had understood it. He understands it still. On the motorway in October, I said, "She has it. It is safe." He said, "Good." He knew what the good was for. He knew the weight of the good. When I said in January, I gave it to Emily for her engagement, he went very still. That is the ring, and that is the story of it. Now I want to tell you what Daniel did. Daniel was very still for about 4 seconds. Then he said, "The text." He said it quietly to himself, not to me, not to Judith, in the way of someone who is locating something they have already placed carefully, and who knows exactly where it is. He looked at Judith. He said, "I need to ask you something." He said, "The text Sophie sent you in October." He said, "The text that said, 'I left my grandmother's ring in the bathroom dish.'" He said, "Do you have that text?" Judith said, She said, "Yes." She said, "I have it." He said, "You received a text in October that said my grandmother's ring, and you gave the ring to Emily in October, and you are telling me you forgot." She said, "I thought it was mine." He said, "Mum." He said, "Do you have a ring with a dark blue stone?" She was quiet. He said, "Do you?" She said, "I have had many rings over the years." He said, "Mum," he said, "a dark blue stone ring." She said, "I couldn't remember where it came from." He said, "It came from Sophie's grandmother." He said, "It came from Junction 4 on the motorway in October." He said, "It came from a text message that said my grandmother's ring that is in your phone right now." He said, "That is where it came from." She said, "I thought..." She started twice and did not finish. He said, "I am going to ask you one question, and I need you to answer it honestly." He said, "Did you forget that the ring was Sophie's, or did you find a way to not know?" She looked at the table. She said, "Daniel." He said, "Those are two different things." He said, "Forgetting is something that happens." He said, "Finding a way to not know is something you choose, even if the choice is not fully conscious." He said, "I am asking which one." She said, "I would never have done it deliberately." He said, "Yes." He said, "I believe that." He said, "But deliberately is not the only category." He said, "I believe something happened in October that is between accident and decision." He said, "I believe the ring was in the dish, and your niece was getting engaged, and the text was in your phone, and you found a way to hold all of that, without letting the three things touch each other." He said, "I am not accusing you of malice." He said, "I am asking you to be honest about what was happening in October." She was quiet for a very long time. I was beside Daniel. I had not spoken. I was watching Judith's face. I have been watching Judith's face for 6 years, and I know its registers. The register I was watching was the register of a person who has been asked to look at something clearly, and who is deciding whether to look. Then she looked. She said, "I think I made myself not know." She said, "I think that is what happened." She said, "I think I found a way to not see the text." Daniel said, "Yes." He said, "Thank you for saying that." He said, "That is what I needed you to say." He said, "The ring is coming back." He said, "I am going to call Emily today." He said, "And I need you to understand, Mum, what the ring is." He said, "It is 60 years on Frances's hand." He said, "It is 12 years on Sophie's hand." He said, "It is the thing she texted you about from the car because leaving it behind made her hand feel wrong." He said, "It is not a ring from a dish." He said, "It has never been a ring from a dish." She said, "I know." She said it very quietly. She said, "I know what it is." He said, "Yes." He said, "And I need that knowing to have been there in October." Daniel called Emily the same afternoon. I want to tell you about Emily before I tell you about the call, because Emily is in this account, and she deserves the full account of who she is in it. Emily is 28 years old. She is Judith's niece by her sister. She had been engaged for 3 months. She had received the ring from Judith at the engagement dinner, presented as a family piece. She had worn it for 3 months believing it was that. She did not know anything about Sophie, specifically. She did not know about October the 4th. She did not know about Junction 4 on the motorway. She had received a ring in good faith from a woman she trusted, and she had worn it in good faith as the thing she had been told it was. She had told her friends. It was Judith's. She had told her fiancé. It was Judith's. She had worn it every day for 3 months. She was wearing it when Daniel called. I know she was wearing it because she told us afterward. She had been wearing it when her phone rang, and Daniel's name appeared, and she had answered and heard his voice and understood, within 4 sentences, what she was wearing. Daniel told me the call afterward in the way he tells me things, completely, the full account. He had said, "Emily." She had said, "Yes." He had said, "I need to tell you something about the ring Judith gave you." Emily had said nothing. He had said, "The ring belonged to Sophie's grandmother." He had said, "Sophie left it at Judith's house in October." He had said, "She texted Judith from the car." He had said, "We have the text." Emily had said, "It is not hers to give." He had said, "No." She had said, "Does Judith know this?" He had said, "Yes." He had said, "We spoke to her today." Emily had said, "I need a moment." She had hung up. 22 minutes later she had called back. She had said, "I am going to return the ring." Daniel had said, "Emily, you have nothing to apologize for." She had said, "I know that." She had said, "I am still going to return it." She had said, "I wore it for 3 months." She had said, "I told people it was my engagement ring." She had said, "My fiancé knows it as my engagement ring." She had said, "I am going to need a few days to manage that, and then I am going to return it by the end of the week." Daniel had said, "Take whatever time you need." She had said, "I will have it back to you by Friday." She had said, "I need to ask you one thing." He had said, "Yes." She had said, "Was it on her hand?" He had said, "Every day for 12 years." She had said, "Yes." She had said, "I thought it felt like that." She had said, "It felt like a ring that had been on a hand for a long time." He had said, "It has." She had said, "Okay." She had said, "Friday." She hung up. Daniel came back to where I was. He said, "She is returning it." I said, "I know." He said, "She is a good person." I said, "Yes." He said, "She said it felt like a ring that had been on a hand for a long time." I said, "It has." He said, "Yes. Friday." The ring arrived by registered courier at 11 in the morning. I was at home. I signed for it. The package was small and padded and wrapped with care. Inside was the ring in a small pouch that was not the same pouch it had left my hand in. It was a clean white pouch with a gold drawstring. A new pouch, one that Emily had found and used for the returning. Inside the pouch was the ring. Inside the package with the ring was a handwritten note. The note said, "I am so sorry. I did not know. It is a beautiful ring. I can understand why you love it. I hope it is glad to be going home. Emily." I read the note 3 times. I put it on the table. I took the ring out of the pouch. I held it for a moment. Dark blue stone. yellow gold. The weight I know in my right hand. I put it on. My hand felt correct. I sat at the table for a while. Daniel came in. He said, "It is here." I said, "Yes." He said, "You have it on." I said, "Yes." He looked at my hand. He said, "How does it feel?" I said, "How it always feels." He said, "Correct." I said, "Yes." He said, "Emily's note." He had been beside me when I opened it. He had read it. He said, "She is good." I said, "Yes." I said, "I need to do something for Emily." He said, "What do you mean?" I said, "She wore this ring for 3 months. She wore it as her engagement ring. She told people it was. She had it for 3 months and then she gave it back in 4 days." I said, "I need to acknowledge what that cost. Not the ring. The giving back." He said, "What are you thinking?" I said, "Not a replacement for what she had to give back." I said, "A gesture." I said, "Something chosen. Something that says, you gave back something that was irreplaceable, and you did it without being asked to do it twice." He said, "Yes." He said, "I think that is right." I thought about it for a week. I found a small brooch, vintage, with a cluster of garnets in a setting that is the same period as my grandmother's ring, a similar era, a similar quality of craftsmanship. I found it in a small shop in the city. I bought it. I wrapped it. I wrote a note. The note said, "You returned something irreplaceable. I wanted to send you something that is small but chosen. It is not a replacement for anything. It is a gesture of thanks from someone who understands what the returning cost. I hope your engagement is everything you hope. Sophie." I sent it. Emily received it. She texted. She said, "Thank you." She said, "Your ring is extraordinary." She said, "I hope you wear it for 60 more years." I texted back, "I intend to." That is Emily's account in this story. She received something she should not have received, through no fault of her own. She returned it in 4 days without being pressed. She sent a note. She said it felt like a ring that had been on her hand for a long time. She understood what she was handling better, in some ways, than the person who gave it to her. I want that to be in the record. Emily is 28 years old, and she is going to be a good person for a long time. Judith called 2 weeks after the ring came back. I took the call. Daniel offered to take it. I said, "No." I said, "I need to take it." He said, "Are you sure?" I said, "Yes." I took it in the kitchen alone. She said, "Sophie." I said, "Yes." She said, "I am calling to say I am sorry." I said, "Yes." She said, "I am so sorry." She said it 3 times. The 3rd time was the truest one, which is often how it is with apologies. The first one is the announcement, and the second is the reinforcement, and the third is when the person is actually in it. I said, "I hear you." I did not say, "I accept your apology." I said, "I hear you. There is a difference." She said, "I should have protected it." I said, "Yes." She said, "You texted me from the car." I said, "Yes." I said, "I texted you from Junction 4 on the motorway because I had left it, and I needed you to know it was there, and that it was important." She said, "I know." She said, "I have the text." She said, "I read it again this week." She said, "I have read it several times since Daniel called me." I said, "What do you think when you read it?" She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I think I made myself not know." She said, "I think that is the most accurate thing I can say about October." She said, "I think I found a way to hold what was in the dish without connecting it to the text." She said, "I do not have a full explanation for that." She said, I know that the explanation matters to you, and I do not have a complete one, she said. All I have is that the most accurate description I can give is that I made myself not know. I said, yes. I said, I think that is the most accurate thing too. I said, I think that is what happened. She said, I am sorry. I said, yes. I said, Judith. I said, I'm going to need some time. She said, I understand. I said, I am not going to hold this against you permanently. I said, but I am going to need time to understand what the October that you describe means, and what it means for what I trust about you with the things that are mine. She said, I understand. She said, I will not push. She said, take whatever time you need. I said, thank you. I said, I need to go now. She said, yes. She said, Sophie. She said, it is a beautiful ring. She said, I am glad it is home. I said, it is home. I hung up. I sat in the kitchen. I looked at my hand. The ring was on my hand. The ring is on my hand. That is the most complete and accurate sentence I can write about where things are now. I made myself not know is the sentence she gave me, and I have been sitting with it since the call, because it is a very specific and honest description of something I have suspected, but not been able to name in 6 years of knowing Judith. Not malice, not hostility, a chosen not knowing, a practiced looking away from the things that would require her to act differently. I have been sitting with the sentence for 2 months. I do not know yet what to do with it. I know that the ring is on my hand. I know that Emily is going to have a good engagement and a good marriage. I know that Daniel called Emily with gentleness, and Emily responded with grace, and that both of those things are in the record. I know that the brooch has a cluster of garnets in a period setting, and that it has gone to the right place. I know that my hand feels correct. I am holding the rest. I want to tell you about Frances, because I have given you Frances as the origin of the ring, and I have given you the 60 years on her hand, but I have not given you Frances herself, and she is in this story from beginning to end, and she deserves the full account. Frances was born in 1929. She grew up in a house with 5 siblings in a county in the west of the country, which is a specific kind of upbringing. You learn early to manage space and attention, because both are shared across too many people for any one person to have enough. She had moved to the city at 20, for work, which was unusual for a woman in 1949, and which she had done without asking anyone's permission. A fact she reported with a specific mild pride when she mentioned it in later years. She had met my grandfather in the city. He had given her the ring on their first anniversary in 1958. She had worn it from that day. She had worn it through the raising of 3 children, and the keeping of a large garden, and the 53 years of a marriage that she described. In her final years as the specific project of 2 people who had decided to pay close attention to each other. That is what she said. Pay close attention. She said it to me when I was 15, and she was explaining what she thought made a marriage work, and I had written it down when I got home because I knew it was the right sentence for the thing. Pay close attention. The ring had been on the hand that paid close attention for 60 years. I wore it from 22, because my grandmother believed I was ready, and my mother agreed. And I understood, when it was placed on my hand at the kitchen table, that ready meant capable of paying the close attention the ring had always been associated with. I have been paying it. I intend to keep paying it. Daniel paid it on the afternoon of the day we found out about Emily. He found a gentle and complete way to tell a 28-year-old woman that she had been handed something that was not available to be handed, and he did it without anger or blame, and she heard it and responded within 22 minutes with grace. That is close attention. I paid it when I found the brooch in the small shop with the garnet cluster in the period setting. I paid it when I wrote the note. Something small but chosen. The ring carries 60 years of close attention, followed by 12 years of mine. That is 72 years of a specific quality of presence. That is what Judith had in a dish in her bathroom for 3 months. That is what, yes, of course, darling, was the custodianship of. I am not sure Judith knew. I am not sure Judith's not knowing was only about the ring in the practical sense. I think it may also have been not knowing about the 72 years. Not knowing what it means to carry something that carries time. I am giving her that possibility. I am sitting with the possibility that the not knowing was bigger than October and deeper than convenience. I am sitting with it, and I do not know yet what I will find when I have finished sitting. The ring is on my hand. I am paying attention to that. That is the whole account. Christmas. My parents' house. 3 weeks after Judith's call. I want to tell you about Christmas, because Christmas is the last part of this account, and it is the right way to end it. My parents' house is 4 hours from us in the other direction from Judith's, which means that getting from Judith's to my parents requires going through where we live, a geography that I find, in the context of this year. Quite fitting. My mother met us at the door. She had been watching for the car. She came out when we pulled into the drive, and she was already moving toward me when I got out, and she took my hand the way she takes it when she has something to say that requires both hands. Both of hers around my right hand, which is the hand with the ring. She looked down. She looked at the ring. She did not say anything for a moment. She said, "It is home." I said, "Yes." She said, "It had an adventure." I said, "Yes." She said, "Tell me." We went inside. We sat at the kitchen table I grew up at, and I told her everything. She listened to the whole account. The motorway, the text, October, Judith, Daniel's conversation, Emily's call, Friday's courier, Emily's note, the brooch and the garnet cluster and Emily's text. My mother listened to all of it without interrupting. At the end she said, "What did you send Emily?" I told her. She said, "The garnet brooch." She said, "The period setting." I said, "Yes." She was quiet for a moment. She said, "That was right." She said, "The ring is home and the girl who wore it for 3 months has something chosen." She said, "That is the correct order of things." I said, "Yes." She said, "Your grandmother would have agreed." I said, "I know." She said, "Frances understood about the correct order of things." She said, "She understood that when something goes the wrong way, the first question is not how to punish the wrong, but how to correct the order." She said, "The ring is home." She said, "Emily has something chosen." She said, "Those are the 2 things." I said, "Yes." She said, "And Judith?" I said, "I am giving it time." She said, "Yes." She said, "Time is the right instrument for that particular thing." She said, "You will know when you have had enough of it." I said, "Yes." She said, "And Daniel?" I said, "Daniel called Emily on the afternoon of the day we found out. He called Emily with the full account, and with gentleness, and without pressing, and she responded within 22 minutes. My mother said, "Yes." She said, "That is the man he is." I said, "Yes." She took my hand again. She looked at the ring. Dark blue stone. Yellow gold setting. 1958. Frances's hand for 60 years. My hand for 12. My mother's hand around mine. She said, "There is a quality to it." I said, "Yes." She said, "It has been on the right hands." I said, "Yes." She squeezed my hand and let go. We had tea. The kitchen smelled like Christmas. The ring was on my hand. My grandmother would have been pleased about the brooch. I'm sure of that. Here is my question for you. If your meal gave away your grandmother's irreplaceable heirloom and her best explanation was, "I made myself not know," what would you have said when she called? Tell me in the comments. I read every one. There is one more thing about this account that I have not yet said, and I want to say it because it is the truest thing. The text from October. "Yes, of course, darling." 4 words. She responded in 4 minutes. "Yes, of course, darling." I have been thinking about those 4 words for months. On the motorway, they were the words that let me put my hand on my knee and say, "It is safe. She has it." The words did the job a text is supposed to do. They communicated that the thing was received and understood and would be protected. "Yes, of course, darling." And then, October, the niece. The engagement. The not knowing she made herself do. And the 4 words are still in the phone. Sent at 4 minutes after I sent the text from Junction 4. And the 4 words say, "Yes, of course, darling." And the ring spent 3 months on someone else's hand. I have been thinking about what the 4 words are now. In retrospect, I think they are the truest evidence of what I said. A chosen not knowing. The 4 words were sent from the person who knew to the person who had just texted from the car, and they communicated safety. And then the knowing was put aside. Not deleted. Not unread, put aside. Set on a shelf in the mind beside the dish on the bathroom counter. And the niece got engaged. The 4 words are still in the thread. Above them is my text. My grandmother's ring. Below them is the next text, months later. Can you check for it when we arrive? Between the 2 texts. October. The ring on someone else's hand. "Yes, of course, darling." That is the full account. That is the complete record of the 4 words and what they were and what they became. The ring is on my hand. The text is in the thread. Both are true. Both are mine.